everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women, an organization that was co-founded with LIA100 in 2018 with an intent to bring women in Agile and Lean organization onto a common platform so we can support each other, we can share what we know with each other, recognize and celebrate the women among us, and most importantly, recognize the challenges that we all have and also learn from the other incredible women around us. And in that attempt, we are bringing 100 women stories and journeys across the world. So we can listen to them, we can get inspired, and we can draw some parallel to where we are and something that resonates with us, get inspired, get to know them more, and potentially apply some of those success stories to our own lives. In that attempt, today we have with us Amanda Colpoys from UK. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here on this platform.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Likewise. And what we'll do is we will introduce you very briefly to your audience, and then we can get into the conversation. Okay? So for our audience, a brief introduction about Amanda. Amanda is a lean, agile, and a growth coach driving high performance through innovation in ways of working. She's an award-winning business agility coach, introducing lean practices across organizations in the UK. She supports organizations to grow, innovate, and deliver value quickly and at scale. Her approach is to align cross-functional teams around business missions, breaking down silos and ensuring collaboration between all functions across the organization. She has several specialities, including introduction of DevOps practices to her organizations and to her clients, which also includes continuous integration and deployment, and most importantly, culture change, which we also need. So Amanda, welcome again. And first of all, I'd like to start with what brought you to business agility? I know that's one of your passion areas.
Yes, business agility. So I started my agile career, if you like, in much the same way as a lot of people do. I went and did a Scrum Master qualification. The first job I had was with a very well-known startup in the UK, and actually it's literally just floated on the stock exchange. It's gone public for the first time very successfully. But to rewind, I started working with them in a very traditional Scrum Master type role, working with software development teams, and I was very much focused then on improving software development teams. So I did things like introducing continuous integration and continuous deployment, and we got to a place where we were able to work in a really effective way. And what we really wanted to be able to do then was to start leveraging more lean practices, so being much more data driven, much more experimental, lots of testing and learning. But what I discovered was, whereas the product and tech teams wanted to work like that, the rest of the organization had a very different mindset. So I sort of had this epiphany, and sort of it almost felt like, hang on a sec, the last 2 or 3 years feels like it's been a waste of time, because now we have this capability and we can't use it. So I just, I had a bit of a light bulb moment and went, you know what, Agile really doesn't work if it's just in one corner of the organization. The whole organization has got to be thinking and working like this. So really, I'd got to the point where, I'd made myself obsolete within product and tech, which I think is good. That's what you want to try and aim for. They were sorted. So I was looking for the next opportunity to add value within the organization. And I thought, okay, we need to start extending this agile approach beyond product and tech. We need to get everybody thinking in this way, thinking about customers, solving problems for customers, thinking about experimenting, thinking about using data more, and start to get an alignment in the way that we think and the way that we actually work. So that was how I got into the whole idea of business agility, and basically applying all the same principles that you apply within product and tech, this idea of cross-functional teams. But your cross-functional team isn't just product and tech, it starts to include business partners. So you're able to have that level of collaboration and coordination. You identify opportunities together, you come up with ideas to experiment with together, you look at the same data together. So you have this really great alignment, but you're also bringing together all these different skills and experiences. You're creating the conditions for lots of innovation. But most importantly, with that alignment, you have these independent teams that can move really quickly. And we all know the importance of speed within the agile world, about shortening that feedback loop, being able to learn and validate early, and that sort of cross-functional working really liberates that. So yeah, that was how I got into it.
Well, that's very interesting. And when you are a business agility coach, and when you're trying to impact and coach the entire organization now, not just silos, I'm sure you encounter quite a bit of resistance, right? Agile is very popular in software development because, you're developing something, you're delivering something incrementally. And that caught up quite a bit in the past couple of decades. But business agility, I'm talking about the other parts, right? It could be marketing, HR, or, research, innovation, whatever it is. How did you handle the resistance from the other silos in the organization?
Really, you handle the resistance by talking about it in the context of the problems that people are telling you about. So the first time I did it, for example, I spent a lot of time, the company I was working for was a relatively small organization. So it was feasible to talk to teams across the organization, to build up relationships, but also to talk to them about the problems they were experiencing, the frustrations they had. And once you can start understanding their frustrations and help them to understand how actually working in a more agile way is going to address that, that gets you part of the way to dealing with the resistance. I think another element of it is how you communicate it. I think people struggle to know what agile is all about. Even within tech, there's sort of endless debate and a lot of misunderstanding. Outside of tech, you can multiply that by a factor of 100. So first of all, cut out all the nonsense and crap, because a lot of people think, oh, well, it's all about, sprints and it's all about doing stand-ups. And actually you can work in a very agile way without doing any of that at all. So actually getting to the core of what do we mean by agility, which is really shortening that feedback loop. That's really what we're trying to achieve here, and building on that. I think when it comes to resistance, it's very much like within product and tech, that people that are open-minded and willing to give it a try, you'll always have some people that will really dig their heels in. And some of those people might go, you know what, this just isn't for me. But that's actually a pretty small minority. Most people will at least give it a go. And like all things in Agile, when you start experiencing the benefits, you start to recognize the value of it. So if you can get people to the point of experiencing it, that really helps. But I think in the early days, to get them to the point of experiencing it, recognize their problems, help them understand how a change in how they work will address some of those problems, be really clear about what what the change is going to mean, what it's going to look like, what's going to be different. And also the other golden rule, don't try and copy and paste what's happening in tech and just plonk it on a business team, because I think that's quite a common approach when people try and roll out Agile beyond product and tech, is they go to a team and go, right, we need to start working in Scrum, which might be completely the wrong system for them. So I think you've got to go back to the principles of Agile. You've got to look at their specific context and then start to figure out, okay, what does Agile working look like in this context? And when you're getting these cross-functional teams together, and you're mixing up teams with different ways of working, a big thing that I find helps set them up for success is working with them to develop that initial process. How do we work as a cross-functional team? So that doesn't mean all being in a Scrum team and all going to exactly the same ceremonies, but it doesn't mean having some kind of operating cadence whereby you're getting together to figure out your goals, the outcomes that you want to impact, that as a cross-functional team, you're all contributing ideas, because A, that means it's a rich source of ideas, B, it gives everyone a voice, C, it creates great ownership, and then you're getting together to learn based on what you've done, and again sort of repeat that cycle. So having that initial operating cadence in place, a process and a structure, doesn't have to be perfect. It's just something that starts them off to give them a taste of it, and then, as with any agile team, you want them to start to take ownership of it, iterate on it until it gets to the point where, again, they just don't need you anymore.
Yeah, you have to work yourself out of the job. And what you said, a couple of things really caught my attention. One is it's not just about the mundane ceremonies, right? Your stand-ups and your plannings and your refinements. And I totally agree with you, right? They should depend on these ceremonies to align, especially stand-ups. And some of the teams that we know, either they sync up during stand-up or they don't talk at all. So you're not working as a team then, right? If a problem is waiting for the next day stand up to be discussed, then there is something wrong with the team. So that continuous alignment, stand up or not, is extremely important. So that's a great point. And the other point you brought up was to kind of have all voices heard, diverse voices heard. And often I feel that is the biggest battle that we coaches have, to have all voices heard. It's often the loudest or the most powerful voice that stands out and makes decisions, right? And even within the team, it's next to impossible for most coaches to have the entire team speak up, opine, and get their thoughts on the table. And I'm interested to know your thoughts on how do you make people involve, engage, and interact. And I'm talking about 100% of them at the team level, at the program level. How do you enable that?
I think the first thing is to get people curious. Quite often, I find this actually, particularly with um, engineers, there can be a bit of resistance to getting involved with this because I just want to build solutions. You just tell me what to do. I don't want to get involved in meetings about what we should be doing. Whereas actually, put a bit of data in front of them or a bit of customer research, and they instinctively start going, oh, that's interesting. Oh, how could we solve that problem? So you sort of create that curiosity. But I think in terms of the point of within a room, how do you actually get everyone to speak up? You won't necessarily, but some of the tools that I've used in the past. So first of all, brainstorming is really powerful when you're sitting in smaller groups and you're doing a certain amount of creative thinking on your own. So you're submitting your ideas on post-its before you're discussing them as a group. So that allowing people to contribute to the discussion in that way, I think works really well. And the other thing is just equally making use of like we used to, one of the companies I worked with, we used to have a tool specifically for capturing ideas. So again, that's another way to make your voice heard. It doesn't have to be in a face-to-face
Yeah.
scenario. You can contribute in other ways.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll be curious to learn more about the tool, but you're right. It doesn't have to be speaking out verbally in a group setting. It's whatever way you want to capture, everybody's thoughts, everybody's feedback, because it's so important to have that diverse perspectives coming together and converge together so you have a better solution for any problem. Well, that's fantastic. And also, Amanda, I know that you were nominated for, an award in business agility, and very, very rarely do we see the awards, right? To honor and celebrate what you bring to the table. Tell us a little bit about that because it's very interesting and inspiring.
Um, I mean, I think it is really nice to be recognised, but equally, I have to say I take awards with a fairly hefty dose of salt because
Mhm.
um, a lot of people in the agile world uh, work as contractors, and I was actually nominated for that award by an organisation. So straight away, pretty much everybody who was shortlisted for an award has been nominated by an organisation. So straight away, there's a bunch of people that are not being considered. Likewise, you're not going to have every organisation out there nominating people for awards. So I'm kind of conscious in a situation like that it's you're sort of you're competing, if you like, against a very small set of people. So I think when you win an award for something, yes, it's lovely and you can't help but feel good about it, but equally you've got to be a little bit realistic and not let it not let it go to your head too much. But in
Sure.
terms of the event itself, it was actually great because it was all around women in IT. So the whole theme was women, and there was obviously awards in all kinds of different categories, and it was nice to get together with, frankly, a woman who a bunch of complete strangers who were sat at my table, but they're from really diverse industries. They're doing completely different jobs. So yeah, it was nice meeting some of those people doing very different things to myself, but obviously all part of this kind of women in tech community.
Nice, nice. And as you said, yes, we can't help but enjoy the recognition and celebration, and which is duly deserved. So why not? But you're right. I think they're not solely or they're not the only recognitions that we look for, right? I think some of the gratifications come from transformations that are happening in the organizations and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I want to shift gears to something that is very close to my heart and something that is very close to the mission of Lean and Agile, which is how can we bring diverse perspectives together, right? So let's take organization as a platform to create something, a product or a service to the customer. And I think it's no secret that there is a huge gender imbalance when you look at an organization, right? Right from the market research all the way to operational excellence space and everything in between. And we always struggled as an industry to bring diversity at the front and center of what we do, right? I think most of the times diversity is a check mark. Diversity and inclusion programs are everywhere, mostly a check mark, just a checkbox. But intentionally, the leaders recruiting women leaders or HR, having policies to recruit accordingly, and even at the decision making tables, bringing the diverse perspectives to ensure that we have 50-50, if not less or more, to kind of have women and men kind of opine because we all bring various things, onto the table. And I totally acknowledge the fact that it's not just gender diversity, right? We need a far more, a huge canvas of diversity. But just for the sake of this, conversation, we lack that basic diversity in gender equality. So, what do you think, and what have your observation been in your experience with organizations?
It's an interesting one. I know certainly, this may well be the situation further afield. Definitely in the UK, gender diversity within tech is very challenging. There are just far fewer um, female candidates out there, but equally there are a lot of kind of forums and communities trying to address that. So, for example, I'm part of a women in tech mentoring program, so I mentor other women in tech. And I think a lot of companies that are really serious about diversity are looking at things like boot camps, for example, where women are making a career change to get into tech. So they're going to come out of those boot camps very inexperienced, but that's okay because we're going to take them into the organization and develop them and grow them. And I think organizations that are serious about diversity are looking at those sorts of opportunities, whether it's graduates, boot campers, whatever, but recognizing just sticking a job advert out there and hoping that 50% of the applicants will be female is crazy. It's just not going to happen like that. They actually need to be much more proactive. But what I would also say, one of my most interesting realizations around the whole business agility piece, the first time I did it, I was in an organization where product and tech were very male dominated, as you would expect, but the rest of the organization was extremely female dominated. So actually, once we started forming these cross-functional teams, a sort of fallout from that was that we suddenly had these very diverse teams. And it's kind of interesting. I sort of think, we talk about diversity in tech a lot, and we do, I think, focus too much on women in tech and gender diversity, because to your point, I sometimes feel it shuts out the broader diversity conversation. But it was quite interesting to go, well, actually, if you want more diverse teams, is it that you need more women in tech? Or actually, if we've got better cross-functional working across the business and we're achieving more diverse teams in that way, is that giving you the same result? And thinking from an agile point of view, what's the outcome we're trying to achieve here? And then thinking about multiple different ways to get there. And my other interesting observation from that whole situation around diversity in general is, yes, I think getting more women into tech would be great, but I don't think we should, it's a diversity KPI. It's not the only diversity KPI. And I think sometimes, particularly in tech companies, it just becomes the sole focus, and any other diversity KPI, if you like, can be ignored. And the other thing is, I think there's undue focus on tech as well. I mean, if you look at, again, I can't speak for other countries, but if you look at HR, for example, in the UK, it's hugely female dominated, and it always has been. But where are the forums to get more men into HR? Where are the men in HR mentoring programs, right? And it just feels like tech is this new industry. It's a bit of a bandwagon. There's all this attention on it. Whereas actually, if you look at the whole thing a bit more holistically, you go, okay, well, there's all sorts of areas where we could be improving diversity. And I think, you know, we need to be mindful of not focusing on women in tech at the expense of everything else in the diversity world, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think it should never be a narrow focus, if you will, right? We can put blinders when we are looking at diversity. You're right. I think it should be, I think our intent, of really driving some of these diversity and inclusion programs is to make it balanced across the organization, right? Just like you're saying, it's not just about tech or women in agile or women in something else, but it is about how can we draw that balance across the organization so you have more diverse teams, diverse leadership layers, so different perspectives are being heard, right? So agree with you. I think we shouldn't really fall off the balance in really focusing on just one area versus the others. Then you're creating another kind of imbalance suddenly. So yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And an offshoot from that, Amanda, and I ask this, of so many women I meet. One of the barriers, or the biggest barrier that most women carry with them very commonly is lack of self confidence or a dialogue with self that you're not enough. You got to have A, B, C, and this certification and that experience to be able to do something, launch something, to apply for a job. There's always that belief or feeling of deficit, right? And this might not be the case with everyone and men, but with women, we see this quite a bit, and also on Lean and Agile platform, when we have conversations in safe space, women do speak up and they talk about this. What would be your stance on that? Do you think you ever experienced it? How can we address it as a community?
That is a really interesting question, because I think confidence is great, but I also think humility is really important. And I wouldn't say I'm a person that lacks confidence, but equally I'm full of self-doubt, if you see what I mean. But I think that self-doubt is healthy, because it's a way of almost giving yourself feedback, if you like, going, did I do that quite right? Am I pitching this right? That sort of that constant feeling that you could be a bit better, that you haven't quite nailed it, sort of recognizing your weaknesses, I think needs to go hand in hand with a certain level of confidence. In terms of developing that confidence, I mean, I think I was lucky in as much as, I don't know if this was the way I was raised or if it was just something I was born with, but I was born with quite high levels of belief in myself. And I think that's such an important quality. To give you an example, I was telling my dad about this the other day. I'd never told him, but when I was at primary school, my first day at primary school, we were sitting in the school assembly, and I was sat there cross-legged on the floor, 7 years old, terrified. First day at a big school, and the headmaster got up and he announced who was going to be the school captain and the school vice captain for that year. And I looked up and I went, when I get to the sixth form, I'm going to be school captain. And I was. But you think at 7 years old, I was going, that's going to be me when I get there. Because I'd always had sort of, and that might sound really arrogant, but actually it was more my sort of intrinsic belief was that if you work hard enough, you'll be able to achieve something. You can do anything you want to. It's just down to hard work, which is not entirely true. I'm never going to be Mo Farah, right? I'm never going to be a successful Olympic long distance runner, and I was never going to be. But back when I was 7 years old, as far as I was concerned, if I wanted to be a marathon runner. All I had to do was just work really, really hard at it. So yeah, I think there's definitely something very powerful about belief. If you don't believe you can do something, you don't get started. And the other thing that I would just very quickly add around confidence is, I think confidence is very much something you can build. One of the women that I mentor was talking to me about lack of confidence around public speaking,
Yeah.
and something she wanted to do more of. And I was talking to her about, just start small, start with a small group, enough to push you out of your comfort zone, enough that it's uncomfortable, but not so much that it's terrifying and that it's intimidating. So, start small. Maybe you go to a meetup and you'll be terrified the first time, but you're starting with a group of sort of 20, 30 people. You'll do it and you'll go, wow, I did it. Your confidence has just gone up. It'll be easier the next time. As it gets easier, you start extending the challenges. So the next challenge is a bit bigger, and again, you start to feel a bit uncomfortable. But I think, and I kind of feel a lot of the time I live, I'm either bored or I'm scared. When I'm scared, I'm out of my comfort zone. If I'm not outside my comfort zone, I'm bored. I'd like a bigger zone in the middle. But actually, that pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and recognize, feeling a bit fearful, feeling uncomfortable, and then managing to do it, that's what's building your confidence and your self-belief, I think. So yeah, that would be my one big piece of advice is, recognize that confidence is something you can actually gradually develop. I don't think it's something where you're just stuck with a certain level of confidence.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's such a fantastic advice right there. Thank you, Amanda. I think this can apply, and it is so tangible. It is such an actionable advice, right? You can start small, first of all, believing that confidence can be developed, but you can start small, as you said. Maybe give a presentation to three of your friends, right? And then move out of that, fear zone and start with a meetup. And then, of course, eventually a conference will happen. But yeah, I mean, that is such an actionable advice and so valuable. Thank you so much for sharing that. And as we wrap up, Amanda, do you have an advice for our audience? Just a simple statement, a word, a phrase, whatever you live by, something that drives you forward.
um I would say probably, particularly when it comes to the agile world, always be prepared for the fact that you might be wrong. um, I think it's, especially in the industry that we're working in, and because it is so peripheral to technology, all of it, we're in a very young industry. We are, going through, when I talk about transformation, I don't mean agile transformations, but I mean the world of work is going through seismic transformation. Technology has just disrupted everything, whether you're in a tech company or not. The whole world of work is changing. We're constantly figuring out better ways to do things. And I think it's Amazon have this great expression about strong opinions weakly held. And I think that's quite a good value to live by. Know what you believe, but always be prepared for the fact that you could be wrong, because that means you listen to the counter argument with both ears open. You're ready to recognize that there might be a better way that you just haven't discovered yet. So yeah, that would probably be my,
Love
be
that.
prepared that you could be wrong.
Yeah, yeah. This is a very unique message, Amanda. I've heard so many messages and, in a similar context or a similar theme, but this is a very beautiful advice, right? Know that you could be wrong, because that just fills you with humility. It fills you with limitless possibilities out there, and it just, absorbs all that that is around you, for recognizing that there are so many diverse opinions and options out there, and you could be wrong, and it's okay, right? And that's what we coach as well, right? Fail fast, retrospect, and move on. So
Well, like all the best lessons, it's one I learned the hard way. So
thank you for sharing that lesson, and thank you so much for your time with us today, Amanda. This was a beautiful conversation with so many things that were talked about. Thank you so much, and we wish you good luck with everything that you're about to do.
thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to talk to you.